And today we're going to talk about, startup secrets. I guess, basically just to, share my experience, right? In terms of based on the businesses that we see operating in Singapore, what really works, what are the typical businesses that works in Singapore, what are the pitfalls and what are the failures in Singapore, and how do we get practical advice to win in this market. Of course, I'm coming from a small business perspective, meaning that people who are keen to start up a new business, maybe a small entrepreneur. We're not talking about huge or big organization, multinational companies coming in, investing millions or billions of dollars. All right. So I'm coming from a small business perspective. All right. Without further ado, I'll start the presentation.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And thanks everyone for sharing. Really good to see you have a
And
variety of
again, a
people.
brief agenda. My presentation will take probably about 15 minutes or so, and I will leave like 5 to 10 minutes for question and answers. All right. So this is the general topic. Just one brief slide about HeySara, which is our company. Some macro business landscape in Singapore, what works, what fail, and how to win. All right. So let's start. So again, just 1 minute intro, right? Who are we? We are a technology-driven corporate service provider offering a full suite of corporate solutions tailor-made for startups and small medium enterprise. Okay, basically we help businesses navigate incorporation, compliance, and growth seamlessly. Okay, so that's what HeySara is about. And the next slide, before we go into my perspective or my sharing in terms of what are the possible win of success stories and the failure stories, I think it's important for everyone to first of all understand a bit about the entire landscape, right? I'm sure some of these things are not new to everyone, but it's good for us to all recap in terms of what are the pros and cons, what are the plus points and the minus point of operating a business in Singapore, right? So a lot of companies, they start a business in Singapore because of several reasons. One is that we have the economic stability and growth. And at the same time, Singapore is very, very business friendly. We have very, very business friendly regulations, and the government policies are very pro-business. All right. We have a small but very skilled and multilingual workforce. All right. That's one of the key points. Highly educated as well. We are very strong digital economy. Everybody is fairly tech savvy in Singapore. Okay. And of course, all of you know that we have a world-class infrastructure. And last but not least, I think a lot of companies use Singapore as a gateway to the region, right? Maybe not just Southeast Asia, but to the entire Asia Pacific region as well, right? So, for example, we have a lot of companies recently coming from China, because of all the trade war that's happening with US. They are relocating a lot of the operations to Southeast Asia. And the first point of relocation is typically in Singapore, where they will set up like a regional headquarters, and then perhaps they will consider their factories in Indonesia, Malaysia, or Bangkok or whatever. So Singapore is a hub to the region. Okay. Now, at the same time, of course, there are also some disadvantage of operating in Singapore that we have to be mindful about. One is that we are really a very tiny and highly competitive domestic market, right? Singapore is an island, with about 5 to 6 million population. So that's the domestic market size. Maybe it's just like one city in another country. So we really need to know how to compete in this very small and competitive market. While it is business friendly in terms of the regulatory framework, Singapore imposes very high regulatory compliance, because we are governed. We have to adhere to a lot of these anti-money laundering laws. A lot of companies are trying to come over and become a tax haven, things like that. So there's a lot of compliance matters that we have to be mindful about before we set up a business in Singapore. And because of the small and labor market, our labor cost and manpower is very, very expensive. So you try to avoid labor intensive kind of activity. And even if you want to hire like foreign workers, there are plenty of restrictions and quota requirements as well. And of course, as much as we are very tech savvy, the tech talent gap is always there. It's everywhere in the world, because we are competing against the best brains globally. Everybody wants the best tech brains in the world. So there's still a big gap, right, in terms of the talent gap there. Rental is high. So if you want to rent a big space or commercial space, just be mindful of that. And last but not least, because we are a very open economy, we are susceptible to geopolitical uncertainty, right? So, if there is some like tariff war happening, we are very dependent on free trade, right? If there's no free trade, our ports will be affected, and a lot of trade flow through Singapore. Singapore will get affected. Okay, so these are all the things that we have to be mindful about in terms of the political risk. Okay, so I go to the next slide. So now I will share with you in terms of my personal perspective, and it's a very practical thing, right? I'll go into very specific examples of what I see are the businesses that is thriving in Singapore, right? For small businesses, something for those of you who are still like contemplating what to do, maybe some of you just relocated to Singapore, you're holding a dependent pass, and maybe you want to do some small businesses. You're wondering what is it that I can do with a very small capital. These are some practical examples that you can consider. All right. So one, of course, it's the digital and online kind of marketplace, right? This is something that Singapore is a lot of small businesses are doing. So drop shipment is one of the very, very common things that people do, right? You buy from China, from Alibaba, from Taobao, and then you just ship them to America and things like that. So you probably need to have a good e-commerce platform to do that. So you just make some middleman fee in between. Digital and affiliate marketing is a very strong thing here. So if you are familiar with doing a lot of the search engine optimization techniques, build some website, make sure that you get traffic, and then you just attach, they get some fees from Google in terms of affiliate marketing fees. So this is very low risk and low cost. As long as you have some skill in doing this, you can make some money. All right. Anything to do with online professional services, online coaching, online consultancy, again, very low cost, and highly scalable, because you are talking to the entire world. It's just like what I'm doing today. If I have a webinar, and if let's say my kind of knowledge is something that is well sought after, you can share those information, and maybe there's some fees that you can collect. All right. If you're a tech, you are a gig or a techie, if you build some very basic apps, software as a service, nowadays a lot of AI content generators and things like that, I think also you can make some money too, right? So those are the digital and online business examples that I have elaborated. The second item will be like F&B. I know F&B is something that is like we are so used to. A lot of companies, a lot of our clients, they come in and they wanted to start something on F&B. But F&B is also the most competitive business in Singapore, because the barrier to entry is really low. So we really have to find some niche area of F&B. All right. So I give some very, very practical example: home-based baking, so that you keep the cost low, because commercial rentals are very expensive. All right. Meal preparation. Corporate catering is one of the things that I feel that is very, very lucrative, right? So you can be setting up a central kitchen or a cloud kitchen, and then you do some corporate catering. I think this business is much more scalable than setting up, renting a place or renting a restaurant, and whereas your productivity kind of hours are very limited to the lunch and dinner hour alone. Yeah, kiosk space, food and drinks. These are things, very, very valid example. In fact, we have one recent story. It's a very successful story. I'm not sure any one of you have seen a lot of this orange juice vending machine that is all over Singapore, like a $2 orange juice vending machine. It's called
iJuice, right?
Yeah, iJuice.
See them everywhere.
It's a very simple business concept, but guess what? They are going NASDAQ listing next year, right? And with a market cap of a couple of 100 million, I was kind of like stunned, So imagine like simple businesses like that. Of course, they claim themselves to be like a tech company rather than a juice machine, whatever, So that's a very good success story in Singapore. All right. So that's more on the F&B. And then item number 3, I think education is something that is very well sought after in Singapore, because Singaporeans, if you ask all parents in Singapore, what is the biggest ticket item, expense item on their, household? Tuitions for their kids. Because Singaporeans spend a lot of money trying to cultivate and educate their young, and they're willing to invest in tuitions, right? So I'm talking about private tuitions and enrichment classes, not the generic tuition centers, right? Because that you need like scale and credibility. But if you are skilled, if you are good in maths, a particular subject, coding, you can be a very successful private tutor, and you can make quite decent money as a freelancer. All right. So those are all very practical examples. Next, I have like pet services. Again, Singaporeans, a lot of them, nowadays, there are no babies there, but they have lots of pets, So the fertility rate is like all-time low. So everybody is grooming a dog or a cat. So they spend a lot of money on pet grooming. I was one of my friend, I was like, for ourselves, we go for a salon, we do go a haircut, and we are spending like those very cheap, no frills haircut, $12, things like that. But a dog, a small little dog, Maltese dog grooming is like $70, $80. They're willing to spend $70, $80 to do the hair grooming for the pet, but they themselves just spend $12 for the haircut. So that's the thing, All right. Item number 5, actually, green related businesses, because this is one area that the government is emphasizing a lot on. So anything that is like eco-friendly or the other item that I mentioned on point 2, this is very, very useful. Upcycling and second-hand fashion business. This is a huge business in Singapore. All right. Yeah, a lot of people, for example, you buy used Rolex watches, maybe just refurbish it a little bit, and then you can sell and make a few $1,000s. Or you have a Hermes bag or an LV bag, whatever it is, do a little bit of, refurbishment, and you can sell it like at a very, very high price. This is a very, very lucrative business because second-hand market, right? There is no transparency in pricing. I mean, we know what is the price of a brand new Louis Vuitton bag, but if you sell a second-hand bag and it is in perfect condition, you buy at 50%, you sell it at 80%, you make 30%. That's bad. That's as simple as that. So I see a lot of thriving second-hand fashion businesses out in Singapore as well. Okay. Yeah, item number 6, immigration services, because Singapore is a location of choice for a lot of migrants, right? I mean, a lot of people wants to relocate to Singapore. So immigration services is very, very well sought after. People want to see how we can get an EP, a permanent residence or citizenship. But of course, to do this business, you typically need to be a local or a PR because you need to get certain licenses. You need to become an MOM agent before you can actually represent and apply for EP for your client. All right. We ourselves also have this license as well. We also help our clients to do immigration services too. All right. I listed down like agents, like property agents and insurance agents, because I do have friends, although it's a very crowded market. We have like tens of thousands of property agents out there and tens of thousands of insurance agents out there. But if you look at the very successful one, they can make millions of dollars, right? So if you feel that you are somebody, you are a very person with high EQ, right? Of course, you have to clear a few exams. You have to be a local. I think there's still money to be made in this area. Okay, so I think these are all some practical examples of what are the type of businesses that I think as a small entrepreneur and a startup, you can consider. Now, next, what about the ones that I would recommend that you try and shy away from, generic retail shop. As much as possible, try to avoid retail, right? Retail is a dying trend. You look at a lot of the malls. Singapore is not as bad yet, but if you go to other countries like China, all the malls are become ghost town, and the traffic is falling, even if you look at a lot of Singapore mall, while you see that the traffic is decent, but everybody is just doing window shopping at most, they're going there for food, but they happen to walk around. But how many really stop by and buy things from the shop, right? I mean, so the retail sales is dropping every year. So I think this is something that I would recommend you to avoid. Standard coffee shops, standard cafes, restaurants without a niche and branding. It's very, very difficult to survive because of the high cost of rental, the manpower, and because you don't have the branding premium that people are willing to pay for. I would say that if you look at the latest statistics in the market, last year alone, I think more than 10,000 F&B failed in Singapore. They go bust, So that's the kind of trend in the market. I give some examples. Print, traditional advertising agency. I just said general tuition center. I talk about private tutors. I think it's workable, but let's not go into general tuition centers, all right? Or anything that is high capital intensive or highly regulated kind of industries, right? Please try to avoid those. All right. And just a little bit of conclusion in terms of my key takeaways. I think as much as possible, avoid high cost, low profit ventures like the ones I mentioned about, retail, F&B, that is very, very dependent on manpower. Obsolete or declining industries like the retail or traditional brick and mortar business. Highly saturated and competitive market unless we know how to differentiate ourselves. And focus on low cost, digital first, high demand and scalable business that I did mention a few examples. Okay, so these are some of the conclusions that I have. And other practical tips, please start lean, all right? Try not to, a lot of people, when they start investing, they start putting a lot of money on renovation. If they start up a shop, they spend hundreds of thousands on renovation. And then they realize that they run out of working capital in 6 months' time. Many of examples like that. So please start to think carefully. And as much as possible, you can also leverage on a lot of the freelancers or outsourcing partners out there rather than insist on local hiring. Okay. Another very practical tip is try to align what you do with the government initiatives and support, right? Because there are plenty of government support, grants, and initiatives that is open for small businesses. I listed the website there that everybody can go and take a look when you have time. www.businessgrants.gov.sg, right? So please go through the list and see what are the possibilities, what are the possible grants or maybe working capital loans that is applicable to you, right? As a small business. Of course, most of this will be only applicable to the locals, unfortunately. It means Singaporeans and Singapore permanent residents. All right. Leveraging on digital tools and automation, as I mentioned, AI applications and cloud solutions. There are plenty of them out there nowadays, so that we can deploy our solution really, really quick, rather than implementing a custom-made kind of a turnkey solution. Really thinking about using Singapore as a regional hub. And then from there, you think regionally and how do you scale, starting from the domestic market. And last but not least, make sure you choose the right business structure. This is where HeySara will be able to help you in your startup kind of venture, right? Making sure that you have whether the kind of nature of business, is it sole proprietorship, limited liability partnership, or a private limited company that will be suitable to you. And depending on the structure that you choose, there are always pros and cons to it. Maybe in terms of some of the tax advantages or grants and things like that, right? So please talk to us if you have some of these needs, all right? Okay, yeah, so that's all I have. It's about 20 minutes there. Thanks for listening. And right now, I would like to open the time for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Sukai. I think it was great, really good. I think echoing a lot of your suggestions that you mentioned there on tips on how to get off the ground as a business. We talk with some of our members and also those in our network who are, they're really excited about the idea of starting a business or building on their existing business that they do in Singapore. And I think your point there around being regionally focused is also really important. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. For everybody in the session today, so what you can do from a question point of view, just in case you haven't been on these other types of Zoom Q&As before, is there's a button in the middle at the bottom called Q&A. So you can type your question in there, or if you want to instead ask it verbally, then you just raise your hand and then I can unmute you and then you can ask your question. So maybe we'll give the audience a couple of minutes on that one. But I did have a question for you as well, Sukai, one that we get asked a little bit as well. And you did mention a little bit in your last point around choosing the right business structure. When we talk to entrepreneurs maybe that want to start their business, they often ask us, should I start with a sole proprietorship, or should I start with a private limited company, or even I think there's also a partnership one as well, depending on the structure. So I just wondered, like from your point of view, um, how do you kind of weigh up the pros and cons of those, or is it even clearer than pros and cons, and actually you should only do this if that, for example? So what would your answer
Yeah,
be?
okay. I think of course, if for me, I think first of all, I need to understand what is the nature of business
Mm,
that you are pursuing. All right. If it's a really very small like business that you feel that you just want to, maybe, work make a few $1,000s yourself, and you don't have the intention to scale it, and it's going to be yourself alone, and you most likely you're not going to go into maybe getting investments or private investment, private equities outside. Then yes, the sole proprietorship is perfectly all right. But at the same time, if you have the risk that the business, if it fails, you will have to face unlimited kind of liability, right? In case you have
yeah.
debts, your creditor can come after your personal asset, right? Yeah. So whereas on a private limited standpoint, obviously you have a limited liability kind of risk, right? Whatever risk that you have is limited to how much you invest in that company in terms of your paid up capital. And at the same time, the structure of a company can be changed over time more easily, because you may have partners along the way that joins you, and then they can put in more money, and maybe there's an investor coming in, things like that. So I think all things being equal, if you are really thinking a little bit further, you want to grow a business and you have a mindset that this is not just a one-man show kind of business, but you want to scale it, then I would rather that you all think a little bit more strategically and start with a private limited. Because
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, it's not like 10 years or 20 years ago, whereby starting a company is very costly. The cost of setting up a company has gone down quite tremendously. So, starting a company can be as low as $1,000, $2,000, depending on the kind of the additional optional services that you may need. All right.
Yeah.
So therefore, I would feel that if someone that is looking a little bit more further ahead, yeah, private limited company will be more suitable. And in the future, you may sell the business away. All right. When you sell, it's so easy to just detach yourself and then you just switch the shareholder, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you start with the sole proprietorship, it is attached to your personal name. So it's very hard for you to detach it out from your business, right? So these are the things that you will consider. Of course, the compliance cost, you may spend $1,000, thousand over dollars just to maintain a company on a yearly basis at a minimum. Whereas if you are going for a sole proprietorship, it may not cost you that much. It may cost you $100. So I think it all depends on the scalability as well as the nature of the business.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. I think that's a really good answer. I think, maybe my summary of that would just be that if this is something that you're really not fully invested in right now, but maybe you want to just sort of get something going, then you could look at sole proprietorship. But if you really want to make it into a business that could scale, that you could then bring in potential outside support, like be that other shareholders, or you want to maybe even build regionally in that sense, then a private limited company gives you that future proofing in that sense. So that tends to be how we've also approached the topic with when we've had conversations with people. But I think it's good. I think you laid
Sure.
out all of the key reasons why
Mhm.
people can consider both in that sense. So yeah,
Yep,
thank you for
that's
that.
right.
We've got a few questions coming in the chat now, so thanks everybody. First one is from Alex, actually. So Alex, thanks for joining us. He was our guest on the session last week as well, who he himself
Mhm.
is a business owner, having started as an independent as well. So his question said, if I have plans for multiple business verticals, in brackets, some are running at 5, 6 digits annual revenue, some are just ideas, how should I plan a group company setup? How early should I begin doing this?
Okay. 5 to 6 digit annual revenue. All right. So say for example, it's like $100,000 revenue. Can I assume that? So each business vertical, say for example, you have like three business vertical, each of which maybe $100,000 annual revenue.
Mhm.
There is no, I think I will need to have a more clarity in terms of the kind of work that you're doing, and what is your end goal before I can give you, because you can be setting up one company having all the three different vertical, because it doesn't stop you. It doesn't mean that one company can only do one line of business. You can have plenty of lines of business, all right? But there are pros and cons to it, right? Yeah. But for tax planning purposes, it might be worthwhile to consider splitting up into multiple companies. So I think there are no hard and fast rule in terms of what is the perfect solution. I really need to understand a lot better about your intentions, right? What is it that you are planning to do, right? So maybe I'm not sure whether is this the right avenue for us to go very deep, or we can take this offline, and this is something that maybe our colleague can come back to you later on, or to understand better of what your needs are.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, Sukai. Thank you for that. And just to add, so I mean, Alex can add himself as well, but so his business is called WebDorks, and they do a number of services in terms of like creative and web design for business. So actually fitting very much in that bracket that you mentioned at the start of like businesses that could be successful in the region. So I think Alex is one of those success stories, which is great to see.
That's
but
great,
I'm sure we could definitely connect afterwards and talk a little bit more about how his personal business could be structured in that sense. So that'll be great to see. We have another question now. Now it's a little bit of a general one, so I'm going to add a bit to it to maybe help flesh out the question, I guess. And so the question comes from Seem, who says, "How do we run business successfully?" And I think maybe what I would add on to that is that I know that the business that HeySara is in, it's a competitive space. There are a lot of players out there that will maybe offshore things or offer different services and try to differentiate in some way. So I guess as a co-founder and CEO of a successful business in Singapore, how have you managed to run that successfully?
I guess this is for me. I think for every successful business, I always believe that I mean, there's a Chinese saying. I'm not sure, but I'll just say in Chinese first, and then I'll try to translate it in English. It's called 天时地利人和. All right. So basically, in Chinese, it means that you need three elements, to be aligned together to be successful, right? One is heaven. That means you have, it's like heaven's will. You have to kind of like doing the right thing, because as I said, right, if you start and you chose the wrong business to do, then no matter how hard you work, you're gonna struggle. Yeah. So therefore, like if as I mentioned, I think when we went into this business of incorporation secretarial accounting, number one, why do we choose this business? Because number one, this is something that every company will need, right? It's a business, it's an essential service that everybody needs. That's number one. And number two, if we are able to do a good job of onboarding you to and as long as we don't screw up big time and our price remains competitive, you will stay with us. So there is a retainer fee. There's a recurring kind of a part of the business. So when we choose a business, I always try to look for businesses that provide us the recurring nature, because that will give us the base next year that we know that maybe 80%, 90% of our clients will renew with us. Therefore, we will have a strong base and we can grow from there. All right. Yeah. So I think choosing the right business is important. And then, of course, there is also the luck element. Let's put it this way, right? Nobody becomes a billionaire purely because they are smart, Yeah, there must be a certain luck element. They are doing the right thing at the right time. The time element, right? Because it so happened that maybe it's like it's like Elon Musk, he's successful, but there is a lot of luck element as well, right? That it so happened that he was doing certain thing, and the EV kind of market was at the right time to thrive, things like that. So entering a market at the right time is important, because we might be ahead of the time. We're thinking something that's so high tech, but it's not ready. Market's not ready yet. Yeah. So I think that part is, and the third element is yourself. That means nothing. While you can have the luck, you choose the right business, but you yourself must have the knowledge and the sheer hard work and the dedication to make it work. So I think it's a three element must be together, and we will be successful.
Love that. Yeah, thank you for that answer, Suga. I think it's some good wisdom shared there. So hopefully that answers your question, Seem, as well. So Thanks for asking that. We have a couple more here for you. So, one of them from, I'm not sure who it was, an anonymous attendee. So they said, how is the landscape for working in the branding and communication field doing freelance in Singapore? So I know you mentioned in your slides
Yep,
that certain agencies and things like that
that's right.
would be a business maybe to not to kind of jump 2 feet into. But I guess if you're a freelancer in that sense, maybe there's a niche there for them.
When you mentioned about branding, it's like brand marketing. Is that correct? Yeah, something to do with like helping clients to do their brand marketing and communication. I don't quite get it. Like which part of communication are we talking about? Is
I
it
mean,
is it
I don't.
marketing communications and marketing
Yeah,
branding?
I believe
Yeah.
that's the question. Yes, I mean
Okay.
that's how I read it, to be honest. But again, if
All
the
right.
person
Yeah.
wants to clarify, they're welcome to. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Again, I feel that yes, there will be market for it, but again, it's very highly competitive too. The problem is that how do you get to your how do your clients know you and reach you? I think it is not every client, every companies will be interested to engage some of these services, especially the slightly bigger ones. But the question is that how do they get to know you? And how, you know, so I think you must have a very strong online presence yourself so that people can find you and know you and talk to you, right? Yes, that's right. So and the good thing about doing this kind of business, you probably just need to have a very small setup in Singapore, and the bulk of your labor and your manpower can be residing outside of Singapore. I've seen a lot of these digital marketing companies, they are doing similar things. So they have like one or two sales reps running around in Singapore. Those are the local ones, right? But the real operational team, you know, the real development team are all based maybe like website development. I have a client that they just have like two sales people in Singapore, and the entire web development team is in Vietnam. You know, some is in India, SEO. All the work is done in India, but they are just doing marketing and sales in Singapore. So you need to have a combination of both local presence, because you cannot be totally a foreign company. You don't get that trust. But then you must have the outsourcing so that you can keep your costs low and you can be very competitive in the market.
No, that's a great answer. Thank you, that's Sukai. And then maybe just one thing we'll add from our point of view is around, freelancers are a lot of members in the Doerscircle community, and we would echo some of those same points around you need a strong presence, you need to be able to be found, you need to be able to get out there and promote your services, and especially in the field of branding and communication, a lot of that comes down to your individual creativity. It comes down to your ability to deliver maybe quicker than some of the larger organizations out there. So if you can play to those strengths and you can clearly communicate that, then there's certainly an opportunity for you to do this freelance work. But I do think the other thing I would add is that, unless you're a local in that sense, you should still look to build a basic company presence, because that helps add more legitimacy to what you're doing, even as a freelancer. So that's what I suppose comes back to the first question around the topic of sole proprietorship versus private limited company. There's no reason why you couldn't at least set yourself up as a company. And even if you are a freelancer in that sense, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't. So yeah, that would just be the addition I would add on that. Now, there's a couple more questions in here. There's one that says, are there any solutions you offer for digital nomads or foreign entrepreneurs? So maybe it kind of follows on a little bit from the previous question in that sense. But I mean, I know that you do support a lot of foreign entrepreneurs in that sense, because we've also been, using HeySara for that purpose as well. But like, what would you say is the split, I guess, of your kind of audience of people that you support? Is it a mixture of locals and foreigners and maybe those that are digital nomads, people that are maybe working in different locations too?
Yeah, okay. So in HeySara, I mean, today we have close to about 2,000 active clients with us, right? Out of which, I would take maybe about 60% are local companies, 40% are foreign companies. And the foreign companies can come all over the world, right? Globally. We have, from Southeast Asia, China, India, Europe and Americas, and Australia, New Zealand as well. So all over the world. As far as are there any companies that is like doing something similar to you, like I mean, digital nomads is like I just a question. Are you where do you get your revenue? The revenue, is it derived in Singapore or elsewhere? Because I don't quite understand, like when you mention about solutions, like what kind of what aspect of solutions are you referring to?
Yeah.
Because in general terms, digital nomads are like, I'm an employee of a company, and my company allows me to work anywhere in the world. I can be traveling, I can be working along the beach in Bali, as long as I deliver my job, who cares, right? Yeah. So marketing solutions, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on the Sukai as well, just from our point of view, at least those that are members of Doerscircle, sometimes digital nomad might also be a freelance person, but they don't have a fixed location. So yeah, you're right. They could be in Bali. They might be, sometimes in London. They might be in Singapore. But I think the question you asked is a good one of like where is the service that you're delivering? So maybe in this example, if you are delivering some services in Singapore, but maybe you're not fixed location in Singapore in that sense.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So if your clients are based in Singapore, right? I mean, of course, then you have to set up an entity or a private limited company in Singapore where you can release your invoices and you can collect the money, and then you can be working elsewhere, right? So that is a very typical kind of situation. Whereas if you are getting money, even if you can be like deriving services revenue from outside of Singapore too. All right. As long as you are working, let's say for example you have jobs from some Hong Kong or whatever jobs, you can be making payments through your Singapore company, and then because some of this, depending on the country that you're talking about, right? Some are based on the territorial concept of tax. Some are based on global tax kind of systems. If you are based on global tax, you probably may not be able to save much. If you're getting your business from America and you're trying to park them in Singapore, you'll still get taxed in the US. So I think the question is like, I really need to know like where is your source of income, and so that we can give you a proper solution and how to structure the right structure for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good one. And again, for that person, they can always follow up on that one with us. We have another question.
Yeah. Maybe can I also ask? Yeah. Thank you very much, Sukai, for the great presentation. I had a question further from the structures, different types of companies that you spoke about. One other kind of question that we get all the time is from foreigners living in Singapore. They are in most cases are on dependent passes, and then they want to start a business.
Sure.
And they also have different context. Their partner is on one pass, or in some cases on an employment pass. Maybe it's a bit detailed as well, but maybe if you could speak to us at a high level on different options available for foreigners living in Singapore to start business here in Singapore as well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, good question. I think if you are holding a dependent pass, there's an option that is available that allows you to set up a business. So basically, and at the same time, you don't have to, and you can actually set up a low-cost private limited company. All right. So in other words, typically, what the key requirement of setting up a company is, of course, you need to have a business name. You need to have the nature of business. You need to work out a certain capital, and most importantly, you need to have a local director. All right. And for companies, for foreigners, one of the biggest challenges is that they don't have a local director, and therefore they will have to engage someone else. Maybe from our side, we also provide the nominee director services, which will add to the cost, right? Yeah. The advantage of being a dependent pass is that we are able to also help you to get MOM consent. If you set up a company with a minimum shareholding of 30% under your name, all right, then you are entitled, we can get MOM approval such that they are able to get you to be kind of like acting as a normal local director of the company. and therefore you can do away with the need to have a nominee director, right? So this is the advantage of setting up a company using a dependent pass. In other words, you can avoid paying the high nominee director fees if you don't have a local director to act on your behalf. Okay, yeah. And there's no restriction in terms of what are the business that you can do, right? So you'll be once you get the consent, you act as a local director, and you will become behaving like a local tax resident and be able to enjoy the low tax rate, whether it's on the personal basis or at a company level. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, you guys. That's a good one. With one more question, unless any more come in, but last question just said, do you see any opportunities in the travel sector? I know it's maybe a little high level there, but
I guess travel. Yeah, I mean Singapore is one of the very popular destinations in terms of traveling. Right, we have one of the highest number of tourism. Tourism is a very big sector in Singapore. But my personal view is that if again because nowadays, because the information, I mean, there are so many. We used to be like dependent on like travel agencies, or maybe I remember during my time when I was young, when I was traveling, I would start looking at Lonely Planets, and start reading up before I go on my own free and easy trip. But nowadays, it's like there's so much information online that people can look at, right? In terms of where to go, what to do, where to eat. So it's travel agencies are getting very, very niche, right? So one of the areas that I see the opportunities again is like very niche area of traveling. That means you are encouraging maybe some business trips. All right. So we have travel agents that bring like students to Singapore, like maybe during the school holidays. They actually bring a group of students from China. It's like part study and part travel. Say they collaborate with like universities, then they organize a few talks and seminars in universities and allow the students to have an idea of what NUS looks like, NTU looks like. It give them an idea that this is what I want to go, I envisage to be admitted. And at the same time, there is the tourism element, right? So I think these kind of like very custom-made travel plans are very, very sellable, and I think it's thriving in Singapore. Not the generic ones, not like catering for people like just going on a free and easy trip and things like that, where to eat, what to do, but it's really very, very specific. I'm bringing a batch of students from this school, all right, and I will have some very customized solution whereby they can visit the university, they have a few talks. They can come to our office to do certain things. Likewise, in HeySara, we also have business trips, right? So there may be groups of business or entrepreneurs from a certain country. They come to our country and then they visit. And then at the same time, they come to visit some of the officers and have a talk with people like us. So these are the things that I think is useful.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. I was just going to see Tamara, just to put you on the spot. I can unmute you in a sec if you want to elaborate a little bit more on your question. But just before I do, I was just going to add two quick things. There's a Singapore startup called TrueTrip, and they are kind of a bit like your Skyscanners and Trip.com type websites where they aggregate flights and hotels and train trips and things like that. But they're doing it on a model which is trying to be like a corporate travel, except for small businesses as well. So again, I think like you said, they've found a niche part of what is a larger industry, which has become very saturated, and they're tackling that, and I think they've been pretty successful so far. And then there's one more example I had, which was a lady whose name I've forgotten. I apologize. I'll try and dig that out. But she's an entrepreneur based in Singapore, and she has now got a business where she crafts trips for individuals. So it could be maybe luxury travel, or it might be maybe I want to go on a 3 or 4 week tour of India and I want to see these sites and so on. And so she's developing these holidays for people. So I think there's definitely an angle to work there. I think it's finding your skill set and then being able to put that into something which makes you stand out against the others. And like you mentioned, Sukai, as well, around there's so much information out there now. There is also a benefit to how can somebody with expertise take all that information and make it easier to understand? So
Sure.
Tamara, just got you unmuted now. So I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Or does
No,
that
it
help
was
answer
it
your question?
was yeah, no, it helped answer my question. It was more from an as you say, a kind of high level point of view. So that was very helpful.
Awesome. Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay, so I think that's all the questions now. We've got about 10 minutes left for anybody if we want to spotlight anybody, if anybody wants to share a little bit about their business. I see we've got a few people in here. From my point of view, I'm curious if Seem, if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing a bit about what you're doing based in Cambodia, if you don't mind sharing. Maybe I'll just unmute you, and even if you just share 1 or 2 minutes about what you're focusing on in your business, because I think you asked a great question earlier on as well about how to run a successful business. I just sent you that request. Sorry if I'm saying your name correctly, if it's Sam or Seem. Are you there? Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry, did we catch you while you're traveling? Maybe in the meantime, just while we're waiting on you, feel free to just drop in the chat when you're ready, Seem. I'm gonna pick somebody else who I also know is looking at developing their business as well. So Thea, if I'm going to unmute you a second. If you just want to share maybe just a minute of what you're working on, and if you have any questions for Sukai as well, feel free to drop them in. But it'd just be good to hear from those on the call, some of the journeys that they're going on right now. So if you got a second.
I don't know if can you hear me?
Can hear you, yeah, thanks.
So I just moved to Singapore. I'm here on a dependence pass with my husband who works in shipping. And I used to work with a Danish design company when I come from Denmark. So I am looking for like freelance work, and I haven't like made any business yet, so I'm still very much just trying to figure out how it works here. But I am looking into doing the branding and communication. I don't know. I think maybe my question was anonymous for some reason, but I am really much looking into doing the freelance. And that's very much like marketing, copywriting, social media. Like I've done a whole bunch of different things, but I think in general it has been very helpful with all the questions here. So I'm not sure I have like other questions, but yeah, the freelance work is very much where I'm looking. But maybe I have a quick question. Actually, I was just seeing that somebody else asked about the digital nomad, and I'm not really sure I know what a digital nomad is, but I don't know if you have like pros and cons of like setting up a business here in Singapore when I don't have a network here as such. If there's like pros to working as a digital nomad. I don't know if that was a clear question.
No. I think I understand it. I'll very briefly touch on the digital nomad point, and then maybe Sukai can give you the pros and cons. In addition to what he's mentioned in his slides as well. But from our definition of a digital nomad, it tends to be an individual who works for a limited period of time in one location, and the digital part of that relates to the types of businesses they tend to work in. So digital being mostly over the web in that sense. So one of the big examples actually is drop shipping, which Sukai mentioned in his slides. There are a lot, for example, that I know are based in Bali, for example. So they may situate themselves for a few months in a location like Thailand or Bali or somewhere like that, and they operate a business online. And everything is kind of run on a just-in-time model in the sense of, you're not holding products in a warehouse and things like that. You're essentially buying as you get the interest. So you have an investment in advertising and things like that, and generating a customer base, and then that will then translate into hopefully revenue for you if you have something that people want to buy. But the nomad part is really that you may be in one location for a few months, then you move somewhere else. And I guess the benefit to that is that some individuals want the freedom to maybe also travel while they work, so they can earn while they're experiencing the world. And then for some people also, it gives them maybe additional financial benefits, like maybe they don't want to own a home and be stuck in one place, for example, or they want the benefit of some regions, like Thailand, for example, will offer you quite a favorable visa to stay in Thailand for a certain period of time, for a number of years. So again, you have the right to work, whereas some countries you wouldn't have that right to work. So yeah, that's a bit about digital nomads. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so if you're situated in Singapore, it would make more sense just to like create a company here and work from here, pay taxes here.
Yeah, as I
Yeah,
said,
it's possible.
yeah, it all depends on where you think will be your source of your income, where your customer will be coming from, right? So if your customers, you feel that it's going to be, coming from Singapore itself, then yeah, I think Singapore will be the best choice for you to start the business.
Okay.
Does that help you a little bit, Dia?
Yeah, I think so. That was really nice. Thank you.
And we can follow up a little bit more. I know we've been talking a little bit, and I think your experience is similar to many in that, they're working out the right path to take, which kind of can give them what they need in terms of, the opportunity to generate business, but also, if they also don't want to maybe overcomplicate matters as well. So yeah, we're happy to continue helping you where we can there. We've got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anyone else wants to raise their hand and add a minute or two about what they're working on. If they've got any questions, please do. Otherwise, we'll just do a bit of a wrap up. Just to allow a few seconds for anyone else. And then it'd be great, Yasis, maybe as well, if you mention a bit about what's coming up next week as well.
Yeah, as you know, these are weekly events where we meet the community and have a huddle with an interesting topic, and also let you ask questions that you have from that expert. But also, it'll have events where we just meet up as the community and discuss some of the challenges that we have, and discuss ideas as well. So next week we have Lindy Heng, who's a startup founder in the coaching and mentoring space, and she has moved from a big corporate into a startup in the recent times. So the topic that she's going to touch on is what she learned from moving from a corporate to a startup environment, and the insights that she could share with other people who are thinking of making that shift. So that's the theme for next week, and we will send out emails and communication to all of you and others over the coming days on that.
Great, thanks. I didn't see any other points in there, so we will wrap up. I see a few people have maybe got to jump to another meeting, but thanks everyone for joining, and thanks in particular to Sukai for sharing his wisdom. We really appreciate it, and as we said, HeySara, a valued partner of ours, and we definitely recommend getting in touch with the team for any matters. You can obviously talk to us afterwards as well if you have any specific questions. And we're looking forward to the next session as well. So yeah, we'll keep them coming. If you have any ideas of things you'd like to talk about, topics and such, then please do share that with us either on WhatsApp or pop us an email or something like that, and we're happy to put that on the radar for future ones. But for now, we'll wrap up and say have a great afternoon and speak to you all soon.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.